You're an editor. 30 years, each of you are working there as high levels. I said these three editors had collectively about 100 years experience, right? How could they make such a simple mistake not to declare who their funder was? They knew they were funded by a lobby group that was in the pocket of Israel or in the interest of Israel. So he did not rule on it, but it's open there for us to see.
Today we are joined by Hassen Lorgat, a leading South African activist and advocate for Palestinians' rights from South Africa, whose own history is marked by the struggle against apartheid. Lorgat has emerged as a powerful voice, challenging media bias, confronting Zionist-influenced narratives, and demanding fair, balanced coverage of Palestine and the ongoing genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. We speak with Lorgat about his efforts and the resistance that he faces in his campaign for just and fair media coverage. Welcome to our program, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you very much, Osama. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Before we talk about the media and the coverage of the Palestinian cause and the Israeli genocide in Gaza, what's happening today in the occupied West Bank and in Jerusalem is unbearable, as the Israeli military campaign is at its peak, building settlements, building roads for Jewish-only use for settlers, and executing children. Just 3 days ago, in a small town near Jenin called Kabatia, the Israeli forces shot and killed a 16-year-old child without any reason. He was not throwing stones, he was not doing anything, just for killing. So while you're watching these scenes from abroad, tell me about your feelings, Hassan.
Yeah, Osama, we are weakened. We all want peace. We want a just peace. And although the ceasefire was not a genuine ceasefire, in that the aggressors were not disarmed, the aggressors, those who caused genocide, were not brought before a court of law, we nevertheless wanted this kind of pause. We wanted this moment to have some days, some weeks, some months without killing. The impunity that prevails there is unspeakable. We cannot speak about it, especially when we know it takes place on the back of a supposed ceasefire.
Yes.
Every time Trump says there's a ceasefire in a country, we note the bodies that fall, any part of the world, whether it's Lebanon or where. When Trump says, I have brought peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo, more people die after that signing of the peace. And it's making us question not only human morality or sense of justice, but also whether we are speaking the same language. If ceasefire means that those with guns can continue killing, then we've got to find another language. But every day we try to fight for justice or try to struggle for peace, but we're in a really, really bad moment. And in the background of this so-called peace, they've attacked the West Bank while all eyes are looking at there's no food in Gaza, they are continuing with the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. It's an underreported story, and they've disarmed many of us in the world. And that's what we need to do. The civil society movements have to be vigilant, take stock, and find new ways of fighting under this period where lies are becoming truth.
Yes, and Hassan, you mentioned underreporting. While Israel was committing its massacres on everyday basis, killing dozens, hundreds of Palestinians, there was media coverage for the situation, mainly in Gaza. Now Israel is using the Trump plan as a cover-up for its killing Palestinians, but this time in a lesser pace. So how do you see the media coverage of that, mainly in South Africa?
The media reports are low. It seems that it is worse now than under the time of the phase of the genocide in Gaza. When we protest in South Africa, when the movement protests, and I'm part of the movement, the people chant in the street, every time the media lies, every time the media lies, another child in Gaza dies. Every time the media lies, another child in Gaza dies. We used to chant that. And it is very true. Every time the media lies or looks away, does not report, another Palestinian child, another adult, another mom, another father, brother, sister, they die. And what is worse is that after Gaza, it seems that the ongoing genocide that is now shifted geographically a little bit to Jerusalem, Jenin, and those areas, does not get the same enthusiastic push. But this is what we have to do. We have to take stock and take back to the streets, But Trump and his crew and supporters all over the world, especially Trump, is operating as if his time in office is running out. He's got to be everywhere. Greenland, tackling Venezuela, making sure that the Zionist friends win, because when his term of office is over, we'll have to renegotiate the terms of what we've lost. And they're trying to change the conditions on the ground so that when whatever regimes come into power in Europe, elsewhere, they'll say, what can we do? This is the reality.
Yes.
And we cannot accept that.
Yeah,
we can.
But Hassan, you were mindful of the importance of media coverage and how it should not be biased to the Zionist narrative. And you started your campaign. Tell us about that campaign and what challenges you faced and to what extent you were able to achieve your goal of that campaign.
Well, I'm a member of the Palestine Solidarity Alliance, so I work with an organization and we're part of the BDS movement. And I work, and part of the things I like doing is to see how we can strengthen our movement. But I take a special look with some other comrades, how the media reports on Palestine. And our movements, the BDS with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, South African Jews for Free Palestine, various of these other groups, got together to put together some manual to advise journalists and activists that when they report on Palestine, they don't refer to it as a conflict. If they want to use war, they've got to put it's a war upon a defenseless people. There's no Gaza Air Force or Air Force in West Bank. These are occupied territories, and Israel has obligations to the people that it has occupied. So this manual has been quite useful for many activists. But I, with my other friends, we've been looking at when the journalists do not report correctly, we just do not leave it at that point, right? Because our media law and the way we do media in South Africa is that the press council, the broadcast council, they all demand that media report truthfully. But in practice, these guys bend over to the powerful. One of the cases that we took up was to the Press Council, which is a body of civil society seeking to regulate the media. Basically, what we saw in the matter of Sunday Times and The Citizen, and there was also another newspaper called Biz News online, they took money from the South African Zionist Federation's member, the Jewish Board of Deputies, to go to Israel and they say Palestine. Mm-hmm. And these newspapers, we discovered, when I did some of the research, I found that they all interviewed the same people. Then I said, oh, it looks like these guys are working in conspiracy or in collusion with each other, because our media law or practice suggests that if you take money from any sponsor, even you, Osama, for your own credibility, so that people can trust you, you will say that this year is our sponsor, right? Mm-hmm. So then we know it's an advert or it's a sponsored one, and that we will then look at the news by saying, oh, when you read this, always bear in mind an oil company sponsored it or this. These guys did not declare it, Osama. These journalists all went separately. When they got back to the country, they wrote stories. And I was pleased to be the one to expose it, in that I found that they interviewed the same people. And in each of the reports, they had Al-Fatah spokesperson, Sabri, Saidam was the one person they spoke, which their hope was to give a balance, to show that they are fair to both Palestine and to the Israelis. And that type of reporting in the time of a genocide basically supports the genocide, because you can't have two sides when the one is so overwhelmingly powerful. The asymmetries of power are such that Israel gets about $40 billion a year in military aid, and to use that against Gaza, to use it against the West Bank, clearly a country and places, townships, if you like, that you occupy, is an abuse of power. It's an abuse of the integrity of being human. And clearly there's no fair fight there. There's no fair fight. But they wanted to come back and write this as a fair fight. Yes. Interestingly for us, Osama, when it was taken to the ombudsman, basically the ombud, you may know, is an Arab concept actually. The ombud adjudicated this matter and said, yes, there's no such a thing as a free lunch. That the people who took this money were likely to be propagating the line of the funders, or the Pied Piper, he who plays the tune, the others would follow. But he did not rule in my favor that there was conspiracy. Because yes, conspiracy, I think rightfully he talks about, is a very difficult concept to prove. But I do think he went as far as to say there was collusion. How do you, Osama, an independent organization, you're an editor, 30 years each of you are working there as high levels. I said these three editors had collectively about 100 years experience, right? How could they make such a simple mistake not to declare who their funder was? They knew they were funded by a lobby group that was in the pocket of Israel or in the interest of Israel. So he did not rule on it, but it's open there for us to see that people with such experience could not make the simple mistake. One of them said basically he forgot to state he got the money from the Zionist organization. You don't forget these things during a genocide. You may forget it in so-called normal times, but for your region, Osama, and from where you are, there are no normal times anymore. Yes. This abnormality has existed for over 80 years.
Yeah, and Hassan, okay, so the South Africa ombudsman looked into that case and it named that collusion instead of conspiracy. Anyway, you found an official body to investigate and to look into such cases, which is much better than in other countries. But how was the impact of you raising this issue on other media organizations and other journalists in South Africa?
We are in a bad space, Osama. Our organizations are not as strong as they once were. I used to work for this trade union body, COSATU, for the teachers union, for the municipal workers union. They're not as powerful we are not as powerful in our movements as we were before. So there is no real journalist union. what you have a national editors forum. And the editors, as you know, as an editor, you are an interface between your board of management, who gets you the money, and also the workers. And I think that we have to realize it made a big impact, but you must bear this in mind. It is not a sufficient impact to stop what is happening there. We just, during the month of September, another Sunday paper published essentially a press release from the Zionist Federation, basically saying that one of the special rapporteurs on health, Dr. Talem, had been fined by a health professional body, right? And they didn't give her a right to reply.
Yes.
Can you believe this is the story? It is so basic that you know, as a journalist, if you're writing about a senior person in world politics, you'll have to hear, if they're talking about something, there has to be another voice to determine the veracity of what they are saying. And this newspaper did not get her voice. And that matter, I'm trying now to work through the press council. We're having some challenges, but we have to be vigilant. What I want to point out to you is that members of parliament from the more conservative wing of our country, the Democratic Alliance, Patriotic Front, the Patriotic Alliance rather, Christian Democratic Party, all those ones, they went to Israel on the junket as well. And Parliament has not been as strong as the activists in the social justice movement have been to expose this. Parliament had an initial hearing and nothing happened. These people are not kept to the same high standard that we are trying to keep the media accountable to.
Yes.
My final point on this, Osama, if these guys compromise the media cannot be a check on how society works. So once they were taken out of the game, the media was not sufficiently vigorous in exposing the politicians' collusion and visits to Israel, meeting the president of Israel during a genocide.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is the difficulty we are facing.
And if we look at the media from a larger scope, you know, since Israel started its genocidal war against the Palestinian people in Gaza, it did not allow any foreign journalists into Gaza, except the ones, you know, who came in order to promote the Israeli narrative, and they were like embedded journalists with the Israeli army. Now, how do you see the reaction or the response of the IFG and journalists around the world with regard to this Israeli illegitimate step, of course, because they don't have the right to prevent journalists from coming to Gaza and reporting of what's happening on the ground?
Osama, recently I've seen some reports that are better than before. It's taken us 2 years to challenge globally The Guardian, CNN, all of these. But I think Israel has been very sharp, and Israeli supporters, they've been trying to buy a lot of these media, mainstream bodies, TikTok and others, so that younger people that have been getting the news on Gaza and the genocide in Palestine can be dampened. But at the same time, while they are doing that, what they've done, so they stopped journalists from coming into Gaza, into the West Bank, they still permit now, but essentially under very severe and restrictive conditions. And then when Palestinian journalists do the job that they do so admirably, they get killed. Over 200 odd journalists, and you know, as part of the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate, that Palestinian journalists have been killed for telling the truth, right? Yeah. So, but what Israel does at the same time, in Europe, it stops, it encourages governments in Europe and America to ban anybody who advocates for liberation in Palestine. Anyone who wants to do a boycott. The word boycott, it started from it's a person in Ireland. It's a name. These concepts that they valued so much, they're now trying to stop Palestinians from campaigning. If you campaign for Palestinian liberation, in Germany, you could be arrested. In London, in England, people are going to jail for advocating for Palestine. They're on hunger strikes. So I tell you, and this is at the hands of a Labour government that is soft on Zionism. So I really think we've got a lot of work to do. Israel pretends that it's the only democracy in the Middle East, yet it kills journalists. It kills freedom of expression, you know.
Yeah.
But Osama, my thing about the international, the Reporters Without Borders, they have said that the journalists must come into the country. I don't think that they have the right to say that without speaking to you Palestinian journalists. They cannot do it as an external body, as well-meaning as they are, without talking to the locally based journalists. You must set the conditions, the terms for which they come. They must acknowledge those who have died, you know, for telling the message, or for narrating the truth.
Yes,
that's
Hassan.
The conditions.
Yeah,
but
you must have watched the performance of the Palestinian journalists, and you mentioned the sacrifices that they offered. More than 275 Palestinian journalists were murdered by the Israeli occupation in Gaza. But my final question to you concerning what's happening now, mainly in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, as the Israeli occupation military campaign is going on day and night in terms of the detention campaigns, killing children, restricting the Palestinians' movement, and paralyzing the Palestinian economy. As since the creation of this government, its officials announced that they are going to have a policy aimed at impoverishing the Palestinian citizens to make all the Palestinians poor. And this is what they are working on really today. So from your perspective and based on your experience, Mr. Hassan, how should we keep the momentum of international press and international media on this Israeli colonial conduct?
So I've raised the issue that I think that you, the syndic, as well as the international bodies like Reporters Without Borders and the Committee to Protect Journalists, you have to approach them, Osama, and we should work all together to have an international online conference to talk about how we report the neglected stories now. People have been disarmed, people are exhausted, but we need you to be making proposals, because what Israel tells people when they go into on these junkets and they go into the West Bank and they do some visits of Israeli tourism, they call it Pallywood. They're saying this didn't happen, that there's no famine. This is Palestine Hollywood, if you like. They're calling it Pallywood. Yeah. So they lie to people. But I must remind them what Judge Pillay, a South African, said in the Rwanda Commission, the genocide in Rwanda. The power of the media to create and destroy fundamental values comes with great responsibility. Those who control such media are accountable for its consequences. So that means the media houses and even the governments that control them are accountable. And our job is to tell the story, to build movements so that we can keep our governments accountable. We should do more at home in South Africa. I don't know what you can do in Palestine, but you are doing so much and you need all the support that you require. But the leadership must be yours, that you must invite us into a discussion to rethink how best we can deepen our solidarity. We are doing things, but we need every day more and more direct contact with you so that we can acknowledge and give each other some warm body support.
Hassan, as always, it has been great having you in the program. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Osama. Thank you for having me, and
thank you.
Amanla.
Salam. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching, and from you, Osama Nazal, have a nice time.